Hey, folks, welcome to the Generational Gap. I am Robert, your resident Gen Xer. Right over there is John, your resident Millennial. And right down there, you'll see a new name. We've got a special guest this evening, and it is the company man. He has joined us this evening to help take part in our discussion about the NAP and libertarianism. And
Yeah.
it could be scary. It could be scary. I'm having identity crisis.
Yeah, congratulations.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Taste the pill.
Yeah,
Shut up!
you want to tell everyone what happened?
No.
Those who
First,
don't
I'm
know.
gonna first I'm gonna recognize that we've got folks in the chat. I see the Elephant Man. I see Saint. I see Wyatt from Roundtable Decision.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
hey.
do what?
Said, oh, hey.
Oh, hey, that was so
Oh,
manly.
hey.
That was
Oh,
manly.
my God.
You're
Like,
so butch. You're
hey.
so
My
butch when you do
God.
that.
Man.
I'm not wearing enough plaid to be butch.
Helton in the house. Helton in the house. I like it. But
Yeah.
and we are hoping that sometime in the very, very near future, well before the show is over, we should be being joined by Jay Edgar. As soon as he gets done with
Yeah.
his stream, he's going to join us as well to take part in this discussion. Um, of course, there's a lot going on right now. There's a whole bunch of shit going on. I think the best meme that I've seen thus far that describes it all was the one 2020, written by Stephen King,
Mm,
directed by Quentin Tarantino,
yeah.
and I thought that was highly appropriate in the face of all this fun that we're having. Some very dramatic shifts and changes have been going on over the last week. It has apparently reached a head, so it's now time to see which direction everything may or may not turn, and just how much more this can blow up. But one of the things, as John pointed out, is that in the course of discussions in Discord with various people, I realized. Oh, I'm sorry, Elephant Man. We were going to try and get Morgan Freeman for the narration, but it just depends on if he's available or not.
Well, too many
Um,
sexual assault allegations against
well,
him.
but he did.
We can't risk it.
He did such a great job with the Penguins. I'm just
He
saying,
did.
you know. But anyway, I have found myself lately um, starting to speak a slightly different language, um, and finding myself making arguments that lean towards this libertarian mindset. And I don't know if it's somehow John has been slipping me something um, during the show. I'm not
Yeah.
sure
Or
what it
company
is.
I've
man's
just been
responses.
breaking open capsules and like pouring red pill into your drink every time you go to take a sip.
Or company man's responses.
Yeah, but
Or company man's
yes, and
responses.
and this is a very good reason why you're here, company man. The The intent of tonight's show, and please, if you haven't already, hit the like button because I think you're going to like this. And if you don't like it, the NAP won't protect you from what we might do. Uh, but,
That's right.
uh,
Principles have their limits, as they say, you know.
exactly.
I don't know. Do
Don't
people say
tread on
that?
me.
Don't tread on our dislike button, all right? Stay away from it. Stay very away from it. It's private property, has a fence around it.
but I've normally got John here, and John, in my estimation, has a specific view of libertarianism, but in many different discussions and watching commentary from the company man, I've noticed a distinct, I would call it some variations on the same principles. And this is why I ask Jay Edgar on as well, because he also has even a third perspective. So, hopefully some of these questions will allow me to explore where this ideology, where this mindset differs, and where it actually, each person maybe does step in harmony with one another, to try and gain a foothold on whether or not, and this is very important to me, that at this point in time, I believe that right now, the last week has opened a massive door for libertarians to make the kind of push that would be necessary to get a strong foothold in Washington, to get a strong foothold in our government, and potentially bring about changes if it is done right. But that always remains to be seen, right? Is if they can do it right, if the infighting, if the, if
Yeah.
if the spectrum can be narrowed enough that they can all get on board. So that being said, I'll start with you, company man, if you don't mind. Please make sure and speak up nice and loud so that the NSA can hear you.
Will do.
If you could just take a moment or two and kind of give us an idea from the libertarian perspective where you stand as a whole in your perspective of the ideology.
I think I'm centered more westward expansion minded, where it's just you, your people, moving out to where you want to and trying to stay alive. And when push comes to shove, you do what you can. And it's not anyone else's responsibility to help you.
Wow,
So
that
voluntarism, basically.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
okay. So voluntarism.
And
So
I'm
I
okay with forming a government once you have a community, but it has to always be voluntary.
Right.
I could be okay with it. I would probably leave that place when it got to that, but I'd have no objections to it.
all right. So and just a quick follow up to that. So that that kind of tells me that perspective doesn't leave a lot of room or necessity for authority as long
It's
as the
not needed.
community is there. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. All right. So John,
Yeah.
same question to you. Where do you stand from a libertarian perspective?
Um, I'm what's called a minarchist. So I want the federal government to be as small as humanly possible while still maintaining a functioning state. Uh, in fact, the federal government should be so small that it
You could
shouldn't be a
not be
surprise if somebody doesn't know who the president is. Like that should not be a surprising fact
Okay.
because it just does not matter so much so to your life that you just don't bother learning his name.
if it doesn't matter why having it in the first place.
Well, for the same things that are outlined in the Constitution, foreign policy and defense of the country, of course, which I think falls under foreign policy, and interstate disputes, not just commerce, but like disputes between states, whether it be you know what side of the river your border is on, and or whatever it is. You know, I guess any kind of disputes really that come up between the states is falls under the purview of the federal government. And those are the two things that would be used most often.
I think
If there
local.
are any more, I haven't thought of them. Any more things that the government should do?
What were you going to say, company man?
I think local could take care of that just fine. I have a great grandfather who was a local politician basically his whole life once he realized the military was not for him. And he helped make a dam on the border happen from his little town.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying, like, instead of two states going to war with each other, there can be mediation beforehand.
Fun fact, LBJ was there for the presentation of the dam.
Oh, well, that makes sense then.
It's
No, he
always
was
the
already old.
it's
But
always
yeah,
the alphabet groups, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay, so John, you touched on something that leads me to a question that I wanted to ask. Um, so, in regard to the Constitution, and I'll throw this to you first, company man. From your standpoint, where does the Constitution and we can even go back and say, okay, let's just talk about the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. Where does that stand in your libertarian view picture of the country?
Assuming I can rejoin that government voluntarily. I agree with most of it, but it needs to. There's a few amendments that need to be ironed out, ironclad, such as the second, of course. Rewrite it in our modern English, maybe that.
Okay. Revising in modern English, and that is something that I have talked about before.
Putting down our meaning straightforward.
Exactly. Okay.
If it's going to be gray, it has to be gray in our English.
Would you go so far as to say that we could do without the Constitution in your America?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's definitely
but
a different
perspective. I'm perfectly okay with having it.
Gotcha. So, John, do you share that same mindset as far as the Constitution is concerned?
Well, no. Since in my libertarian utopia, there would be a federal government, which means that the Constitution would be necessary in order to stop that government doing what governments want to do and gathering more power for itself. Because, like I've said, to you plenty of times, the Constitution doesn't give you rights; it limits the government on what rights it can strip away from you. Now, rewriting it is almost as bad as or revising it is almost as bad as rewriting the entire Constitution. And it's the same problem of who do you trust to write it in modern English? Just because it can be like the way that you phrase things will be left open to interpretation, so you can easily just kind of write it in such a way that it can be interpreted whatever way you want. And I mean, obviously, it was written that way in the first place, but I wouldn't want to fall down that hole again. I want it to be something very plain language. It would have to be. I would have to just outline it completely. Just freedom to say whatever you want, so long as you're not, causing actual like provable harm. Not like oh, you said a bad word or said a mean word to me. I mean, like the classic yelling of fire in a theater when there's no fire. Something like that. That's about it. Even that, I'm not 100% against. Like, I would rather
big federal.
I would rather have people be allowed to yell fire in a theater than not. But that's what we have now, so it'll do.
Okay, now that's an interesting take.
Yeah.
So, John, in your libertarian America, for me, the common citizen, when it comes to, I'll put them out as broad-based words. Who do I answer to for law and justice?
I mean, what do you mean? Who do you answer to?
Right,
as in like the court system, or like law enforcement?
Do I answer to local authority? Do I answer to federal authority?
No, you would answer to local authority. Yeah,
and
very local. Like, if your neighborhood could have a police station, that would be better than some, whether it's in Tallahassee or if it's the county sheriff. The more local it would be, the better, especially if they live near you.
Agreed.
Okay. Yeah. So now, so if based off what you just said, company man, you are in agreement that there should be some sort of law enforcement. Is that correct?
If you want some.
If you want some.
Voluntary, baby, all the way.
You got to speak up, man.
I could imagine myself being a old West Marshal.
And you would leave it to the people in the community on a small scale to determine their own laws and values. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so then, that being the case, how does that span the country? For instance, if I leave my state and go to another state, who am I beholding to?
You, yourself, and I.
Now that some people would say that just leaves, that's an open door to anarchy. Am I correct?
That's kind of what he's talking about.
Yeah, brother.
That's what he's
I
kind of
said rulers.
advocating for
No
that.
rulers, but you can have rule.
Well, now is is that saying now? Do you agree with that, John? How far is your libertarian mindset lean towards
It doesn't go all the way to
anarchy?
anarchy. It doesn't go all the way towards anarchy, although I would prefer a libertarian
Voluntary
anarchy
anarchy.
over the opposite, obviously, over socialism and whatnot. So I would much prefer that than, you know, totalitarianism and shit like that. But I don't know that because anarchy, it always kind of goes down to mob rule when it comes to justice, and
It's already mob rule, just with extra steps.
yeah, but those extra steps kind of help a little bit at
And
least.
do what?
They
Get
help.
to
They
the
help.
police state we're at now? Same ending, but except someone thinks they can just kill you.
Well,
Fair.
no, obviously we don't have the police be as powerful as they are. We hold them much more accountable. Hence why I was saying, it's better if the cops live like right down the street from you. You get to see them while they're mowing their lawn. You know what I mean? They're
Oh,
right
I
there.
get what you mean, John. I get.
Yeah.
I,
So the accountability is the more important thing.
because to be honest with you, I'll let you address this, company man. I have, after watching night after night of what's been going on in this country with these protests that most are eventually leading to rioting, with what I consider criminal activity involved, um, is it almost seems a picture of what a lack of authority would be like on a
You're
regular,
assuming that
consistent
figures
basis.
are still there, but they run off in fear and do nothing anyway. Might as well not have them. Have more money. Stay strapped. Be with your people. Post up.
Well, and what say you to the argument that while I would agree that I've watched the police stand around and allow these things to go on,
As well as
Mm-hmm.
hurt people who literally aren't doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
but I also understand that many of them have been under order because the First Amendment is a very sticky subject when it comes to enforcing the difference between a
And what about on
protest
private
and a
property,
riot.
like that Minnesota lady we were talking about, who got paintballed on her porch?
Oh
No,
yeah.
yeah, no, and I understand.
Those cops should be punished,
Fucking
and I
ridiculous.
don't mean figuratively.
Right.
and I understand what you're talking about there. I will say, and I have said this to you, fair warning was given to people in that instance that things were going to get much more heavy-handed.
If
Um,
you can tell someone to do something on their private property, then why have private property?
okay,
Yeah.
now there's a good point. I get you. I understand that, and that
And
that does make sense.
we've talked about that
And
before.
they,
You don't actually own the land you're on.
yeah, I know. I'm just
It's I'm saying I'm talking to
saying,
Robert though.
Robert doesn't. He's not past that part of the statism.
Right, you don't actually own your land. You're leasing it from the government.
Fed
Oh,
property.
I
Yeah.
understand. Well, I completely understand that.
So
I don't.
what I'm saying is you don't actually have private property.
No, I understand. I
Yeah.
completely understand. Now, when it comes to the rule of law from a stand your ground aspect, get off my fucking property, or we're going to have a problem. So
Yeah.
in that effect, it is my property, right? So
You have a right to defend the government's property when
Hell
someone
yeah.
else is on it.
right,
You
Yeah.
can be their
right.
little piggy.
Yeah. I do
Far
want to
less
address
than
something real quick in the chat because people are saying, like
on
Henry
chat.
was saying about anarchy is no politicians, no rulers, not lawlessness.
I
And then Ron Hilton said anarchy is self-rule. Yeah, I understand that. I wasn't making the argument that it's lawlessness. I'm making the argument that people, like, if you leave justice up just to like the people that are around, it's going to be almost entirely emotion based and not. There's no impartiality
we're
there.
okay with letting other countries do whatever they want. Why not have another state do whatever they want?
Well, yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
no, that's
different.
fine.
It's not different. It's the
That's not.
same.
Well, that's not what I'm saying. No, I'm just saying like
We're
if you
okay with
just leave it
letting
up.
China exist. We're okay with letting slaves in Africa exist. Yada
Yeah.
yada yada. You're not principled. You're just a bitch.
Well, now I would argue that from the standpoint of America, I am very much an isolationist in that mindset that we need, as far as the rest of the world is concerned, if it's not trade oriented, we need to. I don't give a
Yeah,
fuck what they're doing,
yeah,
as long as it doesn't breach our borders. Fuck them. Buy our
and that's
stuff if you want to. Sell us some stuff if you want to. Everything else, I
Hell
don't want to be a
no.
part of your bullshit.
and that's anti-interventionism, which is a staple of libertarian philosophy.
Which
So
I
good
have
job.
come to learn that is,
Learn to love it. The big L.
Yeah,
okay. So now, um, now let's see if both of you, how you two differ or agree on this. So John, from your perspective,
yeah.
what does the non-aggression principle mean to you? And I'm not, and just, I don't necessarily want a textbook
Right,
description. I want to know what it means to you.
right. I mean, that's very simple. It's, you don't be the first one to like aggress. Let's see. Obviously, you do what you want so long as you're not harming someone else. That's the main basic principle. That's the golden rule, basically. To do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That whole deal. It's a rebranding of the same thing, basically. So the non-aggression principle is that uh, if a fight starts, you're not the one who like you're not the one who was shoving. You're not the one who was yelling loudly, even because that's escalation, right? But if something does pop off, you're absolutely going to
You
defend
do what you
yourself
want, brother.
to the best of your ability, and most likely make sure that he doesn't fight again.
Now, is that based off of, as someone mentioned earlier, talking about basic human rights, or is that based on constitutional rights, or a
Human.
combination of the
Yeah,
two,
no,
John?
no, no, natural rights,
Natural
Natural.
rights.
natural rights. Yeah, you have the
Okay.
right to defend yourself. You have the right to. That's part of the
If
right to
you aggress
life.
on me, you're at my mercy. You have lost your human rights.
Yeah, and that's what and I've told you that before, Robert. I forget exactly what context it was. Let me see if I can remember where where I said, yeah, if you violate someone else's rights, then you forfeit your own.
Okay.
And
Now,
I'd say only to them. Like I said, fuck the state. But
Yeah,
okay. So,
I agree.
falling back to retribution.
You got to speak up, man. You're all
Falling
super
back
low.
to the retribution I was talking about the other day.
oh, okay.
Mm.
So, so you would say then, company man, that you're basically in agreement with the perspective that John has on the NAP, very much the same viewpoint. Is that correct?
Yes, and that it should stay with those parties.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right. So now, based off of that, it leads me to my first question in regards to what's been going on. Um, for, John, you talked about escalation. Okay.
Hmm.
So we have the ability to protest, peacefully protest in this country. All right.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've consistently seen on the lower scale of aggression is protesters not protesting but getting in the face of the police that are there, and this is going on the understanding, we need to understand that we are in a world where police exist and they have a job to do, right?
Right.
But you see protesters standing in their face saying all sorts of things
Hmm.
in what seems an attempt to escalate the
Right.
situation. When a response,
I wouldn't see yelling as a
well,
No, I
I
mean
mean, they've
it's an
said
attempt
pretty
at escalation.
yelling
Doesn't
is
mean that it justifies
physical.
escalation, but it is
right.
certainly an attempt to get a reaction out of the cop.
Okay.
If we
So
both want to have a yelling match, I'm cool with that, but I don't think it's cause for physical retribution.
No, I was going to make that point too. Yeah, so just because someone's screaming
okay,
at you,
so
that's why you try. That's when you try de-escalation tactics and hope that you don't have to actually get into a fight.
which
You gotta be
which
a
I've
strong
seen
man.
which I've seen many of the police do in the face of that, just stand there and completely attempt to ignore what's being said to
Yeah.
them. And I you know,
That's probably the best they can
you
do.
can hear some pretty dastardly things being said to these
Oh,
police
yeah.
officers.
Oh, yeah.
Because I mean, and let me ask this question real quick. I mean, are we all in agreement that yes, there are bad police, but there are many good cops out there as well that are not brutal pieces of shit?
Sure, yeah, but I think that's irrelevant to
Well,
most points. I mean,
well,
the only way that's really relevant is if you're trying to, console yourself. You know what I mean? If you're trying to be like, okay, well, the police aren't all bad. I guess I can continue to trust them, or
no,
I hope I get a
This
good
is
one, or something like
this
that.
the only reason I bring that up is from the standpoint of protesters trying to escalate the situation to cops who they are lambasting for the actions of another police officer off in another state that killed a black man. That, they attack verbally these police officers who are potentially not anywhere near that level of brutality or kind of asshole.
I mean, yeah,
and support that
but
system, they are culpable.
I mean, so like I've said before, it's not the individual police officers that I have a problem with for the most part. It's the institution itself that I have a problem with. It's the amount of power that they're allowed to
Well, right.
have, the amount of things they're allowed to get away with, and it's nothing to do
Sure.
with the individual officers themselves.
Okay.
It's the thing as a whole.
All right. So now let's take it a step further, and when we see protesters begin to pelt the police with objects,
Hmm.
is there when does that become a violation of the NAP and an escalation situation?
As soon as the brick leaves their hand.
Are you in agreement with that, company man?
Who threw the first brick / shot the first rubber bullet?
Right. I mean, basically, whoever aggressed first is the person at fault. Unless, of course, they were trying to defend somebody else, which is obviously a different,
And if you're attacking someone unrelated,
Well, yeah, that too.
then it does, like, you're not getting anywhere. For the difference between a rioter and a protester, you can make the same parallel between the good cops and bad cops.
Okay, so in what you said,
either they're all bad, or they're all pretty good, and none of you should be fighting in the first place. But here you are.
right? Because something you said about the police just a few moments ago about being a part of the larger organization kind of makes them all culpable. Does that not apply to the protesters who are cheering the aggressors versus shutting them down?
The ones that are cheering, yes. The ones that are walking and getting pelted and shot, no.
Yeah.
So then
there are videos of both, and one are justified and the other aren't.
So how would you, company man, how would you approach a situation in which you have to differentiate individuals from the mob in a situation like that to address the aggression?
Stay out of it unless you saw it.
So if random bricks are just flying out of the crowd, you stand there and take it and ignore it.
I would suggest you leave, but more.
Wait, are you talking about from the perspective of the police,
Yes,
or just
yes.
Okay.
Being there, like, are they talking about me being there?
Well, like if you're there and you see somebody throwing a brick, are you going to shut it down because you're there to peacefully protest?
Hell no, I don't want to get my ass kicked. I don't want the next brick coming my way, man. I'm out. I'm leaving the area.
So
I'm
you
done
would be
with that
leaving.
shit.
Okay, so
Yeah.
from the police perspective, from an authority figure that if we are looking at this from a NAP perspective, at what point, how do you differentiate the mob and individual to address that aggression?
Like I said, stay out. I don't care if the cops get napped upon, because they have already violated our naps by being thieves in the first place.
Yeah, that's fair.
Now, I guess that is, this is
Yeah, I
where
can show mercy with thievery.
now, when you say the cops are thieves, can you go ahead and expound upon that for me so that I'm a little more clear on what you mean?
Taxation is theft.
Okay.
Well, not even just taxation in the form of like fines
And
and things like that.
civil forfeiture
Civil
law.
forfeiture, yeah.
So what that tells me that we have, we should have
The fact
more
I
more
don't rest upon
education.
them already is a fact of my mercy, and that I wish to be left alone.
That tells me though that we are severely lacking in education in this country, because if that were a mindset, if that were something that was believed, there would be no one trying to get those jobs. I mean, they're jobs, and they're presented as, you know, community service individual, to protect and serve the public, et cetera, et cetera, that they serve an important role. Um,
Not under
but
constitutional law, but okay.
Right.
okay, well, I mean,
They are
I
perceived as such. They aren't technically.
okay, so that makes then there's a point
So
that
again, the system being not great in the first place. Trash.
okay, so um, but the Constitution in the scenario you described earlier for your America, okay, if you're talking about will an old West sheriff kind of situation, does the Constitution wouldn't put that person in power either? Is that correct?
Correct.
So if I'm understanding correctly, police and authority overall are a completely unconstitutional entity that we created to enforce laws that may or may not be
The government created to enforce taxes.
to enforce taxes. That was I guess what you're saying is that was the original intent of public
That
service
is what they
officials like that.
are.
What was that?
That's how they act.
Mm.
Is that? Do you think does that stem from the idea that it is tax dollars that pay their salary?
Yes.
Okay. Um, if if the police acted more like public servants that were paid by the citizenry as they are, but they respected that and answered to the
I could get
citizens'
on board with
authority.
that as a compromise.
Okay. Okay. So if they were more,
Assuming I have to compromise, because I do, because not the vast majority does not think like me.
right, and that's and of course, right, that's where we wind up being is the reality we currently live in, right? We
Yeah.
have to try and look at these ideals and how they would possibly, you know, be interwoven into our current society. Because I think we can all agree that even should libertarianism make its way into Washington and even, have a libertarian president, we're not going to get rid of police in communities. I don't think the will of there's too many people that want that. Is that correct, John, company man? Either one of you?
Correct.
Okay. So,
But I think getting rid of the old guard would have to start first, and you'd have to put new ones after in the new world.
and I would assume that would require an entirely new regime of training that would make them beholding to the citizenry versus the power.
Versus
Also-
themselves, yeah.
Yes.
That's all they're accountable to right now. I mean, they have the internal affairs. It's a fucking joke.
It's a joke.
It's like, oh, we investigated ourselves and found out we did nothing wrong. How coincidental is that? It's a fucking joke.
So, would you agree with if I expounded into the idea that the police are much more like organized crime than
Yes,
actual
Yeah.
public servants?
Absolutely.
Okay.
They are the same, correct.
Okay. That's an interesting take.
That's
Now,
what I told my cousin the other day. I was trying to convince him it's blue versus you, man, not this brown shit, black
Yeah,
shit.
yeah,
But he couldn't get past the
100%.
statism.
It is tough to break through.
All they
To
want
be
to see is
honest, it
more
is.
racism.
Yeah.
so from understanding that when we look out at these images and these videos that are coming out, and we see various police officers and groups who are kneeling with protesters, who are interacting with protesters in a positive light, who are who are the sheriff and putting down their
Or like that
helmet and
one
baton
sheriff.
and
Yeah,
marching
where
with
was
the
he from?
protesters. I'm sorry.
That one sheriff.
Well, one sheriff did it, but there have been multiple instances around the country where other police officers, groups of them kneeling down,
Hmm.
walking up, actually having dialogue with.
Well, they're acting more like servants and compassionate,
Right,
and
they're
not just
doing
doing
more of
work.
their job than most do. And that would be the way to kind of not to quell the riots is too far. They should have done some stuff like that before. The best way to get over hatred is exposure. To meet people that are the type that you hate, whatever type that might be, whether it be racism or sexism or any of these isms, or
All the
if you hate the
isms.
police, and you meet a couple of police officers that have similar interests to you, you can talk to them, you be like, get a better understanding at the very least, and that would be the way to, kind of cool the temperature on people who just, absolutely hate all police.
So,
I mean, that's the way that they should go. Not that I want the police around all too much anyway, but that's the
so,
way that they should be doing it.
Assuming they have to be around. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
so in going back to the 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 latest incident that sparked all of this, um,
Really
how
insane, man.
how does the NAP look at that killing and diffuse racism as the primary factor in that murder? Because I see that a lot
I'm
of
not
people.
sure it was, but
Well, no, and that's what I see. A lot of people focused on a black man was killed at the hands of a white man, when
and
what
that
Right.
a
I see
citizen was
is that
murdered by a cop.
a man died, not a man died,
Hmm.
But
and
Robert, you're white. You couldn't possibly know the brown feelings.
I've got enough red in my blood that I can kind of understand. I mean, y'all need to get the fuck off my land sometimes. I mean, I'm just saying,
No, you
y'all
don't own it.
stole shit
Remember?
from me. I mean, you want to talk thieves? Well, not
Come from the
necessarily
same.
you, company man, but because but
We both belong here, cunt.
Yeah, I was gonna say the border crossed him, man.
right.
Yeah.
So yes, but I mean,
The
you
one who should get out is John, Irish cunt.
right, right.
Whoa, hang on now, because none of my ancestors were here at the time. They had nothing to do with it. Now you're just judging me
Exactly.
based on the color of my skin. All right.
Yeah, you profited
Well,
off the blood, sweat, and tears of our dead. So fuck you.
You know.
So
Opportunist gonna opportune.
is
like
the is
Crim's
the
gonna crim.
um,
Yeah.
is the NAP an avenue by which we could rid the idea of racism out of I guess I want to say out of the justice system, out of government, out of the minds of people in a more positive way than all the other silly shit that we do that I think just creates a pedestal that supports it.
I mean, that's kind of a long and tough
It's a
answer.
strange question.
Yeah, I don't know that. First of all, you can't
We
get rid of racism.
Yeah,
That's
we
Sure,
not going to
both
happen.
I can agree
Never
with
going to
that.
happen.
I can agree that that's
and
inherent
someone
in
can be a
humans.
racist and they can try and stop you from doing etc. Whether the people around them are going to be okay with that is that would be up to them in the voluntary society.
Right. Right.
Is
So
racism a punishable offense? in that world. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, right. It can. I guess that does pinpoint it a little more. I mean,
Oh, that's a much easier answer, though.
can that be used as the crutch by which these kind of things are launched? I mean, does it add? Does it take away the what so many people see as the just cause for doing what they're doing right now?
I'm not so sure. I think it's like crim's gonna crim, racist gonna racist.
Yeah. Obviously, like I said, you can't stop anyone from being racist. The best you can do is to actually treat everyone equally so that no one race has
Which I
advantages
guess is
over
what
any
the
other
NAP
one.
preaches. So technically, maybe it is a NAP violation.
What, to be racist?
It is a small NAP violation.
Ah, if you're not, I mean, you're not aggressing on someone as long as you're not like, you can say whatever you want as long as you're not doing something to someone.
But
You
he
know what I
means
mean?
it
Like you
in
can be racist if
like
you
stopping
want.
someone from doing something like segregation. Is that what you're talking about, Robert? Or am I off?
No, no. I mean, so yeah, there's a good one because that's an excellent point because when we
The
talk about
people wanted it. They voted it in.
Yeah, it's up to the community how they want to deal with something like that.
right, so there comes the deeper thought on this is you
The
know
white supremacist commune.
right how can the nap as a mindset that's taught from the top down, can that eliminate that kind of thing from happening that feeds to the need for equality amongst people? I mean,
You know what? Maybe it can through education because you just stop talking about being racism and being racist.
Yeah.
Just
bec-
like humans are humans.
because I know, John, you have talked before about you've talked about the smaller community and governing itself, a more decentralized government.
Right.
And I did make the argument that, well, you're going to see where,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have forced segregation from the, well, I guess I don't think not forced segregation, but I
You
can't think of
mean
the word
border control,
where you don't let.
immigration policies?
Well, no, 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 no.
That's what it sounds like. I mean,
I'm talking
You mean
about
like the Chinese?
I'm talking about a smaller community level. So, when
yeah,
you
no, that's
look
what
at
I'm saying.
places
But a
like
smaller
Forsyth,
community would have its
when
own.
you look at Forsyth, Georgia, yes, to where, for many years, if an African American moved into the neighborhood, there was probably going to be a cross burned on their lawn. There was probably going to
Right.
be windows broken and things like this, to drive them out of the community.
Right.
This decentralized government and a more libertarian minded state tells me that that is an easier thing to do and acceptable.
Not socially
You can
acceptable.
also
I mean,
change.
it depends on the people around.
Yeah.
But I mean, if there's a community of racists that don't like you, you probably shouldn't move into that community in the first place.
Okay.
And this is
That
all
just makes
assuming
sense to me.
this is all assuming these people all think that being racist is a NAP violation. Then they could oust them through other means.
Now,
Yeah.
now I could see that, from the perspective of where you're coming from, company man, I could see that kind of societal structure, when those things happen, that it would be more acceptable because that is what the immediate community wants and has decided. Um, but John, for you, when you talk about, there would still be an, a federal government to some
Mhm.
lesser degree, um, would would there not be some responsibility on the federal government to look at these things, and especially if you start talking about between states, I can't go into this state because I'm black or I'll be driven out. If it were, in a hypothetical situation, if it
Mhm.
were to enlarge into a statewide situation, how does your minimized federal government address that?
It doesn't.
So it just
It's,
leaves it alone.
yeah, it's up to the states, and so you have these two hypothetical states that are, one is completely segregated, says no blacks allowed in the state, and the next one over doesn't, right? And then hopefully the one above it doesn't. Hopefully it's not just like a straight line of no blacks allowed states. Um, what would happen first of all is that there would like services would show up, businesses would start popping up that would say, hey, we'll take you across this state that you're not allowed to be in, for X amount of dollars or whatever. Or, we'll help fund a trip, for you to go around that state. Or there would be, negotiations, say, hey, I'll pay you this much for safe travel through your state, that sort of thing. Um, I mean, there's a lot of different things that would happen with something like that. And I mean, first of all, that's an extreme example. Like, I wouldn't expect an entire state to be that way.
Right.
We're just not that. We're not racist anymore, I guess. So I mean, this is all a hypothetical, extreme, case scenario.
Well, I mean, if you look back at at the time, during the time of the Civil War, there were some very differing mindsets from state to state, depending on how far north or south you went.
Right.
In regards to slavery and African Americans, right?
Yeah.
So that is why I say, okay, this is, I don't know that it's necessarily the furthest leap you could make, but I do see that it could be considered extreme. So then now this question comes to my mind in regard to the NAP. So if you have communities like this, and someone that they don't want there enters that community, and I'll start with you, John. Who determines justice in the violation of the NAP against those people if they're aggressed? And who holds who accountable?
So hang on, let me make sure I got it right. You're still talking about the hypothetical.
Whether it's a small community, whether it's a state. If someone breaches your community border that you don't want there, and you aggress against them, I don't believe you could rely on that community to hold those people accountable for violating the NAP. So who would be
there's no reason why there can't be a like a local court system.
Well, sure, but does that mean, if there's a local court system that is run by that isolationist community, as it were,
yeah,
how is that person going to get justice in the violation of their NAP?
Because he has feds, I think it has to be feds, and you'd have to be that it's a violation of human rights to stop people from free traveling.
Right. I mean, that is part of the Constitution, though, is the being able to travel through states. So I mean, your example is already covered, but
then it would have to fall to your minimal federal government to adjudicate that. Am I correct?
To be principled, I think his would have to go to the feds.
Yeah.
Now, company man, in your world where there is what I would say is no Fed, how does someone find justice in that same instance, or is there justice to be found?
In your heart and soul, brother.
Okay.
It's literally got to be that. Like, you got to be free in your mind, right in your heart, be with your people, and if you could consider a holy war that violating natural human rights that you believe all people should be able to do, insert blah blah blah, then I suppose you could get together with other states / whatever you are and go against these people and take land.
And Henry makes a good point here in the chat. When you realize your community will make more money if you allow other races, they will do it. If they don't, it would be a shit place to visit. Nobody would travel through it. That's also true.
Well, when it's all said and done, sometimes you ain't got no choice but to travel through to get from point A to point B, right? We have a lot. That happens. I mean, go to Texas. How many states you're going to have to travel through to get there, right? From here in Florida, go to Texas, or
3 states. Yeah, to go through Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana.
Right.
Yeah. So Texas is just big as fuck anyway. So that's like 4 states going through it.
States on its own through the city.
I'm sorry, say that again, company man?
Texas is like driving through states on its own already.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah,
it's like a small country. It is.
Well, I mean, it is the Republic of Texas.
When I go to the West, I'm like, wow, we really in somewhere different. This ain't back home.
What's up with West Texas?
That's where I have some family on the border.
No, I meant like, what is it like though? Like,
Just
what's
smaller
what's
town, border town vibes.
okay? Is it like more? What about like the topography? Is it like more deserty, or is
Yeah,
it more?
it
Yeah.
feels way
Okay.
more deserty. I feel like I'm in a western.
Nice.
Nice. Which I guess lends to that wonderful Old West mindset that he has. Um,
Yeah, because you got to get the locals on board, because they have all that crime, and it sucks that the lawmen aren't great.
now,
Wyatt's saying Texas. Texas is huge. 12 hours at the top from where he lives. Damn.
yeah, it would be similar driving from the bottom to the top of California. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah,
that's a big long piece of shit right there.
Yeah,
Whew.
it is a
Um,
long piece of shit.
it
That's
does look
true.
like a kind of a big turd, doesn't it?
Yeah, like it's just like it's still one whole piece, like
okay, you
sliding out
get
of your
one
ass.
more shot at Texas, and then you violate the net.
I
I,
was talking about California, but okay.
I,
Like,
I mean,
Never.
I am just
can I
going to
have my
say,
strike back? I need to make fun of Texas at least 2 more times.
can I do want to say, does anybody else find it slightly funny that California does seem to have a perforated line to easily remove it from the country
Oh,
with
I
the
know.
San Andreas
It's pretty
Fault?
great.
Yeah, let's hope that happens.
I actually did read a book one time. I forget the name of it. It was a really good book, and that was a situation that happened. California had broken off because of a
Mm.
major earthquake, and it was very interesting to see the kind of
The redesign.
slightly post-apocalyptic mindset that occurred in California. It was an interesting book. I wish I could remember the name of it, but boomer, old, 51,
Yeah.
old
So a
time.
book about the California earthquakes.
Not about the earthquakes, but very specifically, it broke it off from the nation, and it just created this entire different world, and actually changed
The
them
new
from
Wild
it
West.
changed them from what they are now to a much more totalitarian kind of state,
That
very
makes sense.
very deeply authoritarian state,
That makes sense.
which
Yeah.
was kind of crazy. It was
Adds
I was
up.
right, not something that you would expect from them at all. But okay, so John, you've got a little bit of Fed that's going to
Yeah.
be overseeing the country. Um,
And I
Whereas
can be okay with a little bit of Fed, but
you could be okay with a little bit of
He'll
Fed.
I
compromise.
could.
Um,
Statist. That was all just a test.
Statist.
You're such a statist
Yeah, you're right. I'm a statist piece of shit.
cuck.
so from your different perspectives, I'll ask you this first, company man. Um, from that ideological standpoint, if we adopted it from where you see things and how they should be, could this country remain the United States of America, or would it have to shift into something different, more divided?
More divided.
Talk about like balkanizing, right?
Basically.
Yeah.
What about in your world, John? What about in your libertarian country?
Yeah, I mean, you can stay the United States of America, but it should be more like the Articles of Confederation,
Damn.
like it was, when what is it, like 20 years we lasted with the Articles of Confederation? Like it was pretty ridiculous. But there were one too
It's
many
pretty wild.
rebellions, and they were like, "Fuck that, we're done with that shit."
I'm
Okay.
okay with that. George
Yeah, so
Washington
I,
said
I'm
that.
I'm much better with. I'd rather see more small scale rebellions
Hell
than
yeah.
more
I'm cool with that.
totalitarianism.
If that's the kind of Fed that has to exist, I could be okay with that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry that the government doesn't have the authority to come in and take your arsenal back. You fucked
Yep.
up. That's on you. Figure it
The,
out.
al- the government also doesn't have the right to tax my whiskey. Fuck you, George Washington.
Yeah, dude, that was, oh my god. I was
You
so sad
suck
when I found
so
that's the
hard.
first thing that broke my like delusion of George Washington being
It's
like
like,
the best, like the
I gotta
paragon
fund
of
my
virtue
French
and shit.
Indian. I gotta fund my French wars. They're doing
Yeah.
it good.
Oh my god.
Or you could just fight them off like you did the biggest fucking nation on planet fucking Earth. Don't be a bitch.
Yeah, fucking statist cuck.
Okay.
Greatest cuck. He drank the Kool-Aid.
He did. I mean, he got a little bit of power, and that's the problem, you know.
Okay. So that
He was
brings
pretty cool up until then.
Yeah.
up a question in my mind. When you talk about rebellions during the as you were back, for those first 20 years, the Articles of
Mm-hmm.
Confederation, um, knowing as we do that, and maybe this is a generalization, but for the most part, these kind of things, when you talk about rebellion, when you talk about, even seceding from the nation, et cetera, these usually encompass violence
Mm-hmm.
and often the death of innocents. So is it
As does all war.
is it wrong?
Yeah.
Is it wrong to us to look at a rebellious faction as a whole violating the NAP in those scenarios?
It depends on
Like the
why they're
IRA.
rebelling. It depends on why. If they were aggressed upon first, it's a reaction
Sure.
to a violation of the NAP, which is then itself not a violation of the NAP because they're no longer covered by it.
I guess I'm looking at it more as a rebellion against, from an ideological standpoint, not necessarily that, big government, during the Articles of Confederation or at any other time stepped in and said, do blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more, we don't agree with this, we don't want to be a part of this, so we're going to rebel, and we're going to openly rebel, and that begins to,
Right.
and violence
there-
ensues from that.
Well, there are plenty of chances between I disagree with this and I'm not gonna I won't abide by this and violence. Like there's a lot of steps that happen in between that.
Okay.
And so the biggest one would obviously be civil disobedience. If a law is unjust, you just don't follow it. So let's say for an example, like all farmers have to paint their fence pink. And you're like, well, that's fucking dumb.
Mine's white.
I'm not gonna do it. Yeah, I'm not gonna do it. That's the first thing you do. It's just you don't follow the law. So you have the only white fence, on the whole street, and you see how that kind of what the reaction is, and you continuously, disobey that law, fuck the system, don't tread on me, and as soon as they do, then you're in the right.
And you start blasting.
Yeah, as soon as they do tread on you, you start blasting.
Okay.
And hopefully you're not a one-man show.
Right. That kind of makes your rebellion not so great, right?
Yeah, well, hopefully you're not the only one, yeah.
Right. I just don't want to mow my fucking lawn, okay?
If I could have just dirt, I would.
No,
you have a garden, dude.
Get a sheep that keeps it trimmed.
But the government wants to watch the garden, so fuck them too. I prefer dirt.
Well, yeah, but you can put seeds in that dirt and grow your own food. It's just like it's like two birds, one stone, and all that.
Right. If you need some help, call my wife. I mean, I can promise you, she knows how to turn your shit out to where you're like, dirt just didn't look as good as this does. Am I wrong, John?
No, it's true. Yeah, absolutely.
You think she can convert me from the dirt lover life?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
So.
And you want to know why? I'll tell you exactly. One of the things that would be her biggest tool in her arsenal. She hates fucking grass. She hates it. She will. Yeah. She will not stop until all the grass is gone out of our lawn. And I'm like, but where the fuck am I going to walk? I'll make you some stepping stones. That's her. I'll make you a stepping stone.
Oh, then the dog's gonna start shitting on the stepping stones because she can't go in the grass. Then
she has grass now, and she still shits on the stepping stone.
she's training.
She's violating my
That's right. She is. She is.
Property.
She's shitting on your private property.
It's true. I mean, I just went out there today, and I'm like, really? You're going to stop in the middle of the path right in front of me and take a piss when there's grass? There's still some grass right over there.
Time? Yeah, like locking eyes the whole time.
She's like, what? What are you talking about?
What? Do something.
Slash grass, slash mud, but you want to step on this fucking concrete with your
right.
Right.
She's like, dude, you're the one watching me pee.
Right? You're the weird one here.
Okay, so
Hang on, real quick. Have you heard from our buddy Ed?
no, I'm watching. He should pop up on the screen as if he has shown up. I haven't seen any notification that he's ready to join. He does have the link as long as he knows how to use it. Elephant Man said he was on his way, but he hasn't said anything else. So if there was an issue,
right about sheep, it's much better to get goats. If you want a couple of goats, you don't want to have just one goat. That's
you need more than one goat.
I'm only going to say this because my stepmother long ago mentioned that. She said this because used to be a guy in Oklahoma in the school that I went to, and his name was Carl. Everybody called him Carl because he had been caught fucking a sheep.
Yeah.
But my stepmother told me when I talked to her about this later in life, when I had moved to Georgia, she said the reason why men are apt to do that is because a sheep vagina feels the closest to a woman's vagina.
I heard that as well. I heard that as well.
Pig is basically like organs is all human anyway.
Yeah, organs and vagina are a little different, though, if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
is the vagina an organ?
It's a sexual organ.
Yeah, it's a sexual organ. It's referred to as a sexual organ.
I thought it was just a point of egress.
That's a violation of the NAP right there.
You better not violate my nappy.
Oh, I'm going to violate all over that nap.
Okay, so
real quick in bed.
All right, so does the in your from your perspectives, does the NAP that covers private property as well? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we look. And I understand that we've had some of these discussions in the past to a certain extent or in Discord, but understand not everybody in the chat has. So if I'm asking you to regurgitate something, please bear with me. But we have rioters that are damaging private property. They're aggressing businesses. They're vandalizing. Are all of these violations of the NAP and thus punishable by the police? Like, should the police respond to that violation and that aggression?
If they were acting as service, yes.
Yeah. I mean, if they were, I mean, that's the point, right? If they're acting in service, yes. But right now, they're kind of
retreat
reacting. They're in
sure
or the precinct
sure
lit on fire, yada yada yada.
And it's also not practical with how few of them there are, even though there might be a lot of them. There's still a lot less than the actual
outnumbered, right?
Right. It's not practical for them to be able to protect every building. They kind of have to choose their targets, if you will.
They have to advance.
Target being one of them. But
they should be advancing and not retreating, assuming they're acting as a service.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're working on their PR at the moment, so them charging a bunch of rioters is probably not going to look too good. Well, they're more worried about optics than they are about your business right now.
What we need is multi-colored roof people.
Yes, we do. We need some roof Koreans.
No, that's racist.
I don't care. Roof Koreans are the best shots ever. That is a fact.
Multicolored roof people.
Multicolored roof. Whether they're a good shot or not, so friendly fire.
So we need more diversity in our rooftop people. Gotcha.
Rooftop people don't discriminate.
That's true. They don't.
Right. So is
break my window. I do what I want with you, bud.
Is friendly fire acceptable under the NAP?
Acceptable in what way?
Well, I mean if
obviously accidents happen. If you intended to kill that person, then
I'm talking more accidents happen kind of situation. If we have our multicolored roof people.
Libertarian paradise.
Say that again.
Forgiveness does exist in the libertarian paradise.
Yeah, I mean that's up to you. I mean, if you're talking about legally, I don't know how that stands now. To be honest, I don't know how friendly fire amongst police stands.
Which they do often.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Well, we know how it
Um,
stands in the social justice world, right? We can see that in various things
no,
that.
they're all about friendly fire. They
They
friendly
Well,
fire
no.
themselves all the time.
Well, no, I'm talking more about the standpoint that, if, for instance, a woman
yeah,
got hit,
socially, they
a
turn on
shopper
you.
got hit in the face with a rubber bullet, and
Mm.
of course the SJWs, they jump all over that. Oh,
Oh, of
he was an
course.
abusive cop. He was an abusive cop.
Oh my God. Okay,
Sorry.
so there is one stereotype about police that is absolutely true, and that's that they are terrible shots.
That's true. They're
Yeah,
trained poorly.
So
they
they,
are
so
absolutely
television
garbage
gets that shit
shots.
right, right?
Oh yeah,
Correct. They are
yeah.
stormtroopers.
They're basically the stormtroopers from
They're
Star
the
Wars.
equivalent of stormtroopers, committing
Yeah.
some
Oh, you
numbers due to
guys,
small
you
tasks.
guys, you
They
guys.
typically don't face city level threats, so yes, they typically have the numbers, and thusly, their not being a good shot still works out.
Yep.
Um, so in the face of all of this, if you were um, if you were in power, let's, in a real
Ooh.
world scenario, you, the company man, or you, John, are in the seat of power as president, as a libertarian. How do you, I'll start with you, John, if you want. How do you approach these riots? And what do you tell your enforcers? I'll just use that as a blanket term for any police, military police, et cetera, et cetera. How do you handle your enforcers and thus handle these riots and things that are going on?
Are we talking about the modern
Yes,
government? The
in
way
a
like
current,
everything else is the same, just I'm
right.
the
You're
president
you're a new
instead.
libertarian president who's trying to institute libertarianism to the world through
System-wide
the
change
system.
to the police,
Yeah, I would. I mean,
like
first
the
of all, I
late
think.
Justin Amash says.
um, I mean, while I would like to do that, I don't think I would go as far as actually getting rid of the federal government. Like I said, I would minimize. I would cripple it. I would, hobble it for sure. But I don't
Right.
think I could get rid of it completely.
Right.
Um,
Okay,
but
that's the
I know
question.
you're talking about the riots. I mean, I would do kind of what Trump is
Okay, say
doing
it again, just
without
speak a
the
little more
martial
louder.
law talk that he has. I would be leaving it up to the governors of the states that it's in, and criticizing them when they don't, react appropriately.
Okay, hold on a second, John and company man. I'm going to take a break here for a moment because I believe someone has shown up that we all know.
Yeah.
J. Edgar, how are you doing this evening, sir? Good to see you.
Good. Sorry it took me so long in there. Our show actually wound up running late because I had a late guest.
Yeah, you were talking to a
It was
chick.
just
I don't.
fine.
We know how it
We
is.
see how it is. Yeah.
You were trying to convince her that your headboard camera was broken, right? I know. How are you doing tonight, Ed? You doing all right? You hanging in there
Been good.
tough? You,
Yeah, it's been a good day, that's for sure. I
uh,
am far, far away from the riots, and anybody who tries to change that will have a half an inch of copper jacketed lead inserted in them.
only a half an inch?
Push.
Only a half an inch.
Mm.
Well,
I
it
think
also
I'll
might be
fucking put
several
your
times
hands
if
in
it
your
needs to.
chest, buddy.
Yeah.
It's not the size that matters. Is that what you're saying?
No, and this point it
It's the
is
size of the
that
exit
matters.
wound.
Right. It's the size of the hole it leaves behind. That's what I tell them.
Right.
I'm like, look,
Yeah.
honey, it's about the size of the hole I'm going to leave behind that you really need to be thinking
Leave a
about.
hole in
Yeah.
your heart wanting more, baby, because it will.
All right, so Ed, I know that we're
All right,
already
I'm gonna use this opportunity to take a piss. I'll be right back.
okay. We
Yeah.
are we're probably going to go past our time a little bit, but because I do want to get
This is a good
some
talk.
I do want to get some input from you on this, and just to give you an idea of what we're doing right now. I don't, I was telling everyone that I've kind of been finding myself speaking more of this libertarian language in things, in how I'm looking at things in perspective. I'm not
Come to the
there.
dark side.
Don't, no, you don't have the right cookies yet. I don't, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid yet. Okay, calm down.
He's almost there.
I am.
So close.
So the first thing I want to, the first thing I did with John and the company man, and I'll let you get that voice, your voice in on this. If you could just take a minute or so and just kind of give us an idea from your perspective, because I chose the three of you very specifically because of the various areas of the spectrum that you fall in from a libertarian standpoint.
The levels of statism.
The levels of statist, yes. Could you educate us on where you see yourself on the libertarian spectrum as a whole, from the standpoint of the state, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I am not a libertarian. I did some soul searching this past year and realized that I don't fit along with most of their ideals. I am a federalist.
Oh, I see. Okay. The statist libertarian. Got it.
Right.
Get away from the federal government and let the people decide individually how much state they want in their lives, and let them move around accordingly. Because some of them are going to want more state in their lives.
Yeah.
I think trying to impose full libertarian out on people from the top level down is actually quite anti-libertarian.
Okay.
But we wouldn't be imposing that will upon you. You could still have your big government as long as it doesn't come towards me.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about that defined me differently as a federalist versus a libertarian is the fact that I understand that people in California want top-down militant control of their lives in every aspect of it from the cradle to the grave. But people in Wyoming might not necessarily want that kind of thing. Or people in Wyoming may want that kind of thing, but they can go to California and find it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
that's basically what we were talking about, though, this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Is pretty much that. I still don't see how that kind of separates itself from libertarianism.
Well,
I'm for a closed border.
Well, so am I. So.
Well, let me say,
if you're talking about like big L libertarian, yeah, fuck that. Count me out.
A higher level of status than I am in the federalist sense.
Yeah, and
most of us are a higher level.
And to clarify, Ed, I'll for some perspective. So in company man's libertarian world, a federal government is not necessarily, but it is acceptable to potentially a certain degree if the people wanted it. With John sees a very minimalized, a super minimalized federal government that would still have overarching powers, low-level powers for interstate commerce, foreign policy, international
and that's really
trade.
About it.
That's your libertarian
kind of where I
world,
am too, actually.
So in your libertarian world, would some amount of federal government be expected or optional?
I go back to the Constitution on this. It is interstate commerce and foreign relations, which does include the border, by the way, foreign relations, because it is determining where we end and our foreign begins.
Yeah.
And would
I concede those.
Now, then the question becomes: you do lean towards a more decentralized form of government, filtering down to the state and local municipalities, right, as opposed to federal rule of law.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have lived in two very different parts of the country, and I think that is kind of what shaped my idea, because I've seen how it works across the country, and what is good for me in Wisconsin does not necessarily work for somebody in South Shore, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Yeah. And those are two areas that I'm actually very well versed in. I mean, for God's sakes, you said local level, and I can attest to that, because living here where I live, which is not going to be named, is absolutely different from living in Madison or Milwaukee, for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, right? I mean, it's a totally different place. That's one of the biggest problems with like any kind of top-down, rule of law, especially in America, is because we're so geographically huge and huge as a population that anything that gets, any kind of legislation that gets passed is going to screw over somebody somewhere in the country. Like
the one Chinese where that's acceptable.
Right. The one size fits all solution is not a solution at all for the United States. We're way too big. and our needs are completely different depending on where you are. Which is why I agree that same point with people who want to have like the $15 an hour minimum wage throughout. It's like, yeah, that works great in like Seattle and maybe San Francisco or some other big cities, but that doesn't work in bumfuck Alabama.
Bumfuck
Doesn't
nowhere,
work
yeah.
in any of those like poorer states, who can't afford that sort of thing.
All right. So, Ed, one other ideological standpoint to clarify with you. What is your interpretation of the NAP from your I'm going on the idea that as a Federalist, that still falls within the Libertarian spectrum. What is your impression of the NAP? How does it fit into your ideology?
Do no harm, but it ends at my fence.
Okay, that sounds very much like, well, everybody
Yeah,
else
very
basically.
succinct.
So,
Yeah.
so the textbook, basically the textbook definition of the NAP. So, and this is what I find interesting, that this is a core value for that it seems like most libertarians agree on. It's
Yeah.
when you start when you start talking about the state, right, company man, that we start to see these wide diversions in mindset.
Yes.
Yeah. hmm
So that, all of this conversation now brings me back to a fundamental question that I believe is the true, I guess, the true failure in the present Libertarian Party is if there are core fundamental values that all libertarians can get behind. You three are a perfect example of that.
hmm
Are you trying to nominate me for Libertarian?
Oh, fuck no. I wouldn't want you in charge of shit, dog. I mean, no, I love you. No. How do we ever get to a point where a libertarian is going to take office that is going to have an impact on government that could bring us to something that would ultimately lead to a more peaceful and hopefully united country?
Start small.
Yeah, I mean the best thing that any one individual can do is what we're doing right now. Is talking to people who don't necessarily agree
Still
with
on that
us.
status Kool-Aid.
Yeah,
Okay.
kind of
Well,
dropping those red
I would
pills.
go a level above that, and something that I have I brought up on one of my ed talks, and Stephen actually agreed with it in the live chat, and then it got some wheels turning in my head. Every time you hear about libertarians, what do you think? What do you hear about?
The Mo Rhodes argument.
No,
Taxation is theft.
no.
The naked people. What?
What offices do libertarians run for?
Usually local governments.
Comptroller?
They don't.
Comptroller?
Senate.
They run for the presidency every
Right.
Oh, a lot of them
They
do,
just
but
jump straight to the presidency.
but I mean there are a lot of people like local politicians that are libertarian.
I've never seen one.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're up there.
Okay.
Florida's
Okay.
pretty libertarian already. We have like 3 laws, and that's about it.
Well, now
Like,
I have to say that Ed brings up a good point in this. Okay,
Yeah.
when you talk about small, when you do, and I agree, Ed, that this is the leap that is made, because
My small is like local village small.
okay, and
Like
so
camps.
oh,
Like
by the
old
way,
Western camps and
um,
stuff. That's how
I,
small my shit is.
I forget what his real name is, but Kane
communes.
from WWE is mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, and he's libertarian.
nice. Okay, so good.
So I'm saying they do
Sound
that.
Okay, so how how do you take a local, so let's talk about like you said with Kane. He's a libertarian and he is in a seat of local power.
hmm
Is a libertarian run community capable of existing in our two-party, what everyone sees as a two-party system, to fully exist and thrive, and is it capable of spreading to the larger arena, say moving into a statewide approach, and still functionally exist when you take into account things like, civil disobedience? I mean, from a state level, I mean, this
Mhm.
state is being civilly disobedient and ignoring federal law.
Well,
Ed,
we've seen that with like the Second Amendment sanctuary, city counties and stuff like
Well,
that.
and
That's
immigration sanctuary cities on the other end of it.
yeah. If you want to the other end of the civil disobedience thing, yeah, the immigration.
but these situations receive a lot of backlash from the federal level, right?
Of course they do.
Because
It's a
they're
challenge to their power. Yeah, I mean,
So how
they're
long
not going to
can
take that laying down.
so Ed, in your opinion, what is the lifespan of
his
the
federalism.
growth of libertarianism in the face of a two-party quote unquote democracy that we have? And I get it, I know, that's why I'm quote unquote. But what is the lifespan and growth potential for that in the present day?
I think you need to be asking yourself a different question. What is
Educate.
the lifespan of the two parties that we have right now? Because I'm looking at a lot of things. I'm looking at the way that the election is going. Even though we're not talking about 2020 right now anymore,
We are agreed it's going to be Trump, right?
I'm sorry?
We are agreed it's going to be Trump again.
I think
don't
so. Yeah,
I don't know.
well,
I think so.
I'm going to say that
I'll put my cents down. Yes.
no, and I will say this, company man, before before this George Floyd shit popped off,
You
I
would have 100% said yes.
I would have probably expected that he would. And I say that because of things that he's done that I'm not going to sugarcoat it, was buying votes. I mean, if I could see a lot of what he's doing was buying votes. But now,
That's politics, baby.
right. But now when you look at the right and they see these hardcore boot tactics that are potentially coming down, well, that doesn't speak to the right any more than it speaks to the left, does it?
Hang on, because there is a difference between libertarians and libertarian right and like Republican.
Well, right, no,
right.
but we're talking about his voter base. We're talking about the two parties,
base,
like Ed
not
said.
Necessarily, they're usually not libertarian. In fact,
Sure,
usually they're right-wing
Libertarians are both
bootlickers,
libertarian or not
and
vote.
since it's their perceived enemy that's doing this, and he's coming down on them hard, that's going to be seen as a good thing from that side.
I get okay. I can understand that.
Well, I want to finish the thought that I was going
Yes,
with
please.
what you were saying with the lifespan of this.
I wanted to hear.
All right. So when I'm looking at this election that's coming up here, and honestly looking at the chances that the Democrat Party has at this point, if the Democrat Party loses this time, they may be done as a party. They either need to do some major soul searching,
Pick a side,
or throw the fucking progressives out of their party and see if they can make an appeal to JFK Democrats again and win the party back. Because all your JFK Democrats went over to the Republican Party because the socialists and the progressives were taking over there. And I do think I could see a collapse of the Democrat Party, have the Republican Party absorb them in, and actually have the Libertarian Party become somewhat of a challenge of them, whether it become a Liberty Party versus a I don't know, authoritarian party.
Enough progressives to make that happen?
I'm sorry?
You think there's enough of the progressive left to make that happen?
I think so.
Mm-hmm. I think so as well. I'm kind of concerned with the infiltration that's already been happening with the Libertarian Party, though. You've seen that. It's not as much as it could be, mostly because libertarians. But I mean, there's definitely, mostly from Vermin Supreme, there was some kind of like real progressive lefty, but not authoritarian at the same time.
Wanting to make the world a better place.
Right. He was doing a lot of the fuck fascism and fuck racism and things like that. Which I mean, yeah, I agree, obviously, but it's just that kind of like dog whistle, I guess, if I can borrow their term for a minute. Dog whistle to them, being like, "Hey, I'm one of you. I'm a progressive too,
Right.
but
I was
I'm
going to
no
say,
longer a libertarian."
so
So
they're subject to the pandering bug as much
right,
as anybody else, right?
exactly. And at the last LNC, there was there were the whole like libertarian socialist like group that was there, and they were talking about the only kind of private property rights you're not allowed to have is if you have like multiple homes and things like that. So they were trying to infiltrate with like their little yes, freedom, except my arbitrary demands. And
I
I
think
fear that,
the
with the way
homesteading,
that
if
the
you have
Libertarian
multiple
Party
homes.
is, with their wanting to gain more member base and become a bigger party, they're going to start giving in to those sorts of things.
But I think that there is a future with the Republican Party and the Democratic Party merging. I mean, a neocon and a neoliberal, there's no fucking difference anymore. They both love bobbing the shit out of brown people. We saw that over the
Yeah.
last
Oh
16
yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ed, let me ask you a question. And
What's up?
this goes back to you talking about how libertarians just kind of jump the shark and shoot straight for the moon in their approach to politics and to getting into power. Is is not this, and it's amazing to me that so much has shifted in 1 week's time. But is this
That is
not
crazy.
an explosive opportunity for the Libertarian Party to ramp up all efforts to get the voice of a libertarian leader into the face of people and into the ears and into the minds of people who are looking for less authority, less big government, more acceptable non-aggression principles? Is this not the perfect opportunity to drive for the goal right now
Mhm.
and get someone in office? I mean, as a
Yeah,
Libertarian
but they
Party, I
elected
would
Joe Jorgensen.
say
Yeah.
that. Well, I get that.
They'd all
Right.
have to go grassroots and stop going for the same office.
Yeah.
I mean, and
I
that's where the
Which I know
question of
is
unity comes
much
in
more
for
early.
me.
But that's what they would
what
have to do.
what I'm going with
Is
when I look at this.
delegate states.
I'm interrupting the company man. I apologize because I can't hear him.
Yeah. No, he needs to deep throat his mic.
Oh my fucking god! I'm sorry.
You're just super
Somebody asked
low,
me once if
man.
I could do that.
You what?
I had some troll on Twitch come over and ask me if I could deep throat my microphone.
Well,
Did
can
you?
you?
Yeah, can you?
I mean, I don't know if that's much of a troll. That's like a legitimate question.
I'm not going to say I can, but I have had to dry my mic off. Um, okay. I understand about Joe Jurgensen, but is it the lack of unity in the Libertarian Party that would prevent taking this amazing opportunity?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. Yes. It would be libertarians that get in their own way. It happens constantly.
But I'm not wrong that this last week has
It is a very
created.
good
I would
opportunity.
say so. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you hear very little out of the anti-gun side of the arguments.
Yeah, like
You're
Texas
hearing
wants to leave the no
very
gun
little
life
of that.
behind.
Other than, of course, David Hogg, who I was making fun of earlier on Twitter. That was pretty funny.
He says something about no guns again.
Well, no, I mean, he's going to, it's like, oh, the National Racist Association just wants to kill more black people and shit like that. Like, it's so stupid.
Okay, so then here's a question. Company man, I'll start with you. In the face of this, if we can all have some agreement that this is an opportunity that should be seized, and finally get the Libertarian Party back on its feet and doing something productive. if the opportunity is let go, if it's passed by and it's ignored, basically, do you still support that libertarian mindset? Do you still move forward
Well,
along your own party line?
I don't like those libertarians. They're too statist for me. So.
And as far as
to
carry on what we're going with that, as far as this election, I think the opportunity is already squandered. I mean, you had the presidential. This was the most.
This cycle.
I'm sorry.
It's definitely not for this cycle. Yeah.
Yeah. If they wanted to go with the pander vote, they should have gone with John Mons. Would have been much better.
Well, and that is the fact. I mean, okay, I'll give it. I don't think that this is the opportunity right now, but I think possibly one of the next election cycles is going to be, because you did get more exposure for the LP this year than you ever had before, because as much as I think Justin Amash is a grandstanding little bitch right now,
Hell yeah,
he put a lot of attention over onto LP.
Yeah.
And he gave it a lot more national stage. And I mean, most people look at that, and I mean, Kokesh said it on my show. He said it absolutely right. If they'd have put Amash up and actually gone through with them, it would have just been another washed up Republican pretending to be a libertarian. But the fact of the matter is that he didn't bring it out to the forefront where people can see it, and where more people are paying attention to this now. And a lot of people are pissed off with both sides. But two things that need to happen right away, and this is where I'm going to go back to harping on what I was saying before. First off, we need more representation on lower levels to get people comfortable with the idea of pulling that lever for something that doesn't say D or fucking R next to it.
Okay.
And second off, we need to I like Vermin Supreme. I think he's a good guy, but I think he's detrimental to the movement. You've got a guy with a fucking boot on his head, and that's what the mainstreams are going to fucking parade out in front of you when they try and convince you that you need to waste your vote on a D or an R.
I mean, I can kind of agree with that, but if like from an optics standpoint, but from a getting members standpoint and putting the message of libertarianism out there, I think he's been very good for that. Once people get past like the joke.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I think you're right about obviously how the media would cover it, which is obviously why he wasn't allowed to be the nominee. But
okay.
I don't know. I don't think he's been completely detrimental to the party at all.
And KWD has been doing really, really well. And he's, I mean, he's not going up to the presidency right now, but he, the last interview that I listened to that involved him was on the Brian Nichols show. And I mean, he did a double run. He ran for the presidency and he ran for a House seat. And I don't know how he's doing with his House seat, but he's putting his money where his mouth is, and he's running for these local seats. I actually talked to a friend of mine who works in the state to see if she can ask around and see who's got a vulnerable seat around here. I'll run for something on the county level or the city level to get an LP representation on the lower end.
Yeah, absolutely.
John, you should run.
No.
You should run for mayor.
He's too lazy.
Mayor of Orlando.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I'm good.
Hello?
We're supposed to be rioting tomorrow, so I'm good on not dealing with that.
Who say that again?
I said we're supposed to be rioting tomorrow.
No.
Oh,
shut the fuck up, John. Just shut up.
Fine.
Mute your mic.
What was it, the company man? What'd you say?
How do I sound? I'm using a mic.
You sound okay. A little more volume. Just open your mouth a little wider when you speak.
Actually form words with your lips instead of just kind of letting them slide out of your mouth.
No. I can hear you, but I've got, I don't know. I don't know about the other two. They're millennials, so they don't hear much. Yeah, I said it. I don't give a fuck.
Pretty sure Ed's Gen X, right?
Are you?
No? I'm like white on the line.
You're white on the line?
He's white on the line.
He's white on the line.
Where's the lie, though?
Yeah, that was unfortunate to say with everything that happened.
Right?
That's the one that's going to get clipped.
John, could we please have our disavow disclaimer?
Yeah, we disavow everything that we say. We disavow everything our guests say. We disavow everything the chat says. We disavow what everyone says at all times.
What the state says at all times.
Everything.
Okay, so here's I hear you talk about Ed. I hear you talking about more coverage, more visibility. Um, as a person who looks at a news aggregator app and goes through headlines on a daily basis, um, is it necessary that the Libertarian Party, that anybody that wants to achieve something in the Libertarian Party, needs to get the mainstream media on board to get more coverage out to the whatever you want to call it, the sheeple voter, the two-party, the divided voter, the D's and the R's who are focusing on mainstream media? Is that a tool that's necessary?
Are you asking me if the LP needs to suck on the dicks of the mainstream media
to get the FaceTime? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and does that not make them the very cucks that you wouldn't want the Libertarian Party to be?
The cucks that they already are, yeah.
They already are cucks, so
yeah. And I will go on with this, and I will say the fact that that's part of the reason that they have the recognition that they have now rather, is because Justin Amash can bend over and take it from the CNNs, and they'll let him on their channel.
See, what I'm ultimately hearing from three different sources right now is that libertarians getting into office is the next stage, because the first stage that needs to happen is you guys gotta get a party together that everybody loves, right? Like, because I'm listening, you're all like, the Libertarian Party is already a cuck. It's fucked. I'm like, why would you be in support of a party that is?
I'm not.
Is that shit?
I am not.
Yeah.
So you're in support of your own libertarian ideals.
Yeah.
I'm in support of the Libertarian Party of Florida. That's been really good. But I'm not a member of the National Party, and I refuse to be.
I am always an independent. If I did vote, I would be independent.
But is it not worth it to suck that up and put a candidate in office at the highest level you can just to get the foot in the door?
Yeah, that's what people always say.
Right? That's what I'm asking.
I'm just going to cuck a little bit, and then I'll stop. And then next thing you know, you're just cucking left, right, and center,
Yeah.
If people have to want me for me, I don't cuck. I ain't no bitch.
That's not what you said last night.
Because ultimately, it seems to me that is like the defibrillator that the Libertarian Party needs, is to just fucking get behind a candidate. It doesn't matter.
But libertarians won't do that. Like, that's the problem. Like I said, libertarians are their own biggest enemy, or their own worst enemy. At least when it comes to trying to be successful in politics.
And
because we don't want it.
How is it that you say that a libertarian convention goes, John?
Do what?
What's the quotes that you hear from a libertarian convention?
What do you mean?
You're a socialist.
Oh yeah, you're a socialist. You're not a real libertarian. That's usually what it is.
Libertarian.
Yeah, that's what it usually is. Yeah, you're not a real libertarian. You're just a
unprincipled fuck.
Right. You're just a disenfranchised Republican and shit like that. Yeah.
16 people standing around calling each other socialists.
Yeah, that is pretty much what it is.
Well,
that's true.
Would you not agree that in the present day and age, we already have, we have all of these systems and programs in place. Any libertarian that were to come into power at the higher levels is going to have to accept those things to get in the door to start changing those things. You're going to have to make your peace with welfare programs for a little while until you get rid of them.
Ron Paul's been in there for a while.
If we get into Congress, we control the money.
But Ron Paul cucked on his party. He now identifies as what, a Republican?
Yeah, a Republican, yeah.
So that's the ultimate cuck to me. Just like Trump did.
He wrote the manifesto on fucking libertarianism. Like, in fact, his book is one of the first libertarian media that I consumed.
Colin actually brings up a good point, and I don't think he intended to, but I think that he did anyway.
What's that?
And that is the fact that
I work like that.
I mean, Ron Paul was in the Congress, and rather than going for the presidency,
libertarian money.
Why don't we go to the Congress where they have the fucking money, where they control the money?
Yeah.
If you want to be fiscally conservative and socially liberal, go control the fucking money.
Control Congress. I was making that point.
He was making that point, yeah.
I was being serious.
It just sounds better from a white voice,
you know. That's how high you need to go. Don't go any higher than Congress. It won't make a difference. You'll just be a little cuck bitch.
Yeah, that's true. Unless like Congress is already libertarian, then you can be like, oh wait, here's a president too, and then just veto everything.
It would have to be Congress first. So
yeah,
any higher is just not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I, in my path
just
to
stop giving money to the Fed.
In my path to like trying to find a place in this mindset with this libertarian ideology, that's where I reach the end of the road where I'm like, if the party is not a party, it doesn't sound like it's a party. It doesn't sound like it's a viable option, that any kind of cohesive option, especially when I do see people like Rand Paul who will immediately throw their shit out of the window and become a part of the state versus entering as a member of the state and continuing to change, all efforts to change the state. How do I, as someone that needs a direction, how do I even begin to support that?
So I would suggest, first off, not trying to like label it or put yourself into some kind of like, I'm a this libertarian or I'm a that libertarian. It's better to just kind of, you get to look, do some introspection. What values are most important to you? Rank them in priority. Even if it's just 1 through 5 or 1 through 10, ranking your values. What principles do you hold as the most important principles? Those sort of things. That's not really something that we can like help you with, or I guess we can explain terms or whatever, but you have to kind of come up with that on your own, and
it's
you
just
may
like
fit into a box or you might not.
Well, it sounds like but it sounds, that seems to me like playing the lottery, because when you've got 1,000 different variations of the libertarian spectrum, and I have 10 very principled ideals that I want, that I'm looking for in a representative. Well,
you could always threaten them with a helicopter,
right? But it becomes a crapshoot, right? Especially, again, there's no survivability there.
That's the price of being passive, my guy.
Well, okay,
you either stay passive or you live long enough to become Pinot. Now, see, when you say those things, company man, I feel I get a very Kim Jong-un vibe from you when you say these things. I'm just putting it out there. Maybe a little more Xi Jinping. I'm not sure which, but no. I get that vibe.
You misunderstand. Company man would never hurt a human. Communists are not humans.
Nor are socialists, nor are Democrats.
Right.
Are humans. They don't believe in human rights.
This is why I'm so desperate to become a libertarian, so I don't get thrown out of a helicopter. Don't you understand?
Exactly. There you go.
Libertarian lives matter. It is this level of confusion. It is this level of disassociation and discord amongst the libertarians that, again, I come back full circle to. I feel like I'm right back at square one. I can value some of the opinions that I hear from different libertarians, but there's not a cohesive mindset there that will speak to enough people on an individual level.
I think that's the point.
it's kind of the paradox of libertarianism, right? Is that
Yeah.
the whole point of it is to not be conformist, not to be a conformist. So if we're all agreeing on the same things, then that's not libertarianism anymore. That's I don't know, just like walking the party line. It's conforming to everyone else around you.
Yes, comrade.
I mean,
Yes, indeed.
I guess that ultimately tells me that you know, I
If we all
interpret that
believed the same thing, we'd already be there.
I kind of interpret that as saying that there's no hope for a libertarian to get into office and make that change unless for some in some way, shape, or form, Ed's idea you know actually can work, where it is started on a small scale level, and that
Yeah, it has to be.
a libertarian community could actually survive in a very divisive and politically charged environment that we have in this country.
Yeah,
So,
it would
Ed,
have
I
to be a
think you need to run
grassroots
for local
movement.
treasury and then go to Congress.
Yeah.
You so, but you can all understand why it's confusing to me, right? I mean,
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
it's
100%.
hugely challenging to try and
It's
It always hurts my heart when Tenchi rears his communist head.
he's not even the worst one there. But
Not, but I love him.
yeah,
you
he's all
better.
right for a
He's my
white boy.
goddamn cousin.
Yeah. Oh fuck! I was gonna make a point, and now you totally made me lose it.
You said he's not the worst one, and then you thought about it.
Oh no! It was before that. I was saying something before we were talking about a Discord server.
Congress.
Yasmin.
Yeah. Well, no, I wasn't gonna talk
Bad.
about him either.
But we should.
If he was here, I would. I wouldn't want to talk about him behind his back.
But we can't get him on the show. I would love to have him come on and really
Oh, he won't
confront
do it.
some of these things, but he won't, for so many wonderfully victimized reasons.
Right.
But
Right,
no,
we're not even all on the whole same team, but apparently we are.
yeah, again, I have a lot of respect for the principles that are, where libertarianism is rooted. Um, it's just, it's disheartening that it
That's what I was
is
gonna
not
say.
something that seems like it can come to life. Go ahead.
That's what I was gonna say. Was fuck! You made me lose it again. God damn it!
The hopelessness.
No. Hang on. I can get it back. Yeah. It's a completely. That's why it's so confusing. It's because it's a completely different mindset from how you're used to thinking. So like you have to switch your thinking quite a bit in order to see it from a libertarian perspective. This whole like idea of, first of all, the institution of the police being a good idea. Or even calling the police, except for in the most extreme of circumstances, or relying on that service being there. Same thing with taxation is theft.
Anymore.
Same thing with taxation is theft. To be able to switch to that mindset of from taxes are a good thing, we need that to run a society, to no, fuck you, that's my money and I'll spend it how I please and you're not allowed to take it. That's a completely different mindset.
For the roads.
It's the cost of living in a society.
Right, we do indeed live in a society. Right.
Fucking society.
And that's why the whole Mo Roads thing is a meme, is because that's the most common form of argument against it. As if people don't think that libertarians have thought about that. As if that's something kind of gotcha.
The road right now, I would.
Yeah, but it's illegal to do it.
It's illegal, yeah.
But John, even you have said, I know you will say taxation is theft, but even you have allowed for the idea that something along the lines of a fair tax, where people pay tax voluntarily because when they purchase goods or resources, etc.
Right, because you're voluntarily giving that money with the understanding that a little bit is added on top of the price for taxes like that. Obviously, it's not ideal, but it's a compromise that I'd be willing to make to get rid of the federal and state income taxes.
What do you say to that, company man, when we talk about taxation as theft?
Just goods taxes? Is that the compromise?
The compromise, yeah, sales
Like
tax
if you
only.
if you make a
Sales
dollar,
tax only?
you make a dollar at work, you get a dollar from
Make a
work. But
dollar
you
in
go
your
buy
society
you go buy milk, you pay tax on the milk because it's a and
for
that
that society.
right.
Okay. Yeah, as long as I'm not forced anything else /
Right.
whiskey.
I mean,
Right.
you're
Your tax burden is your responsibility. It's up to you how much you're taxed because it's how much you're spending.
and
That's how much you're taxed on, not how much
right.
you're making.
And it goes on the assumption that there's not increased taxes on things like alcohol and shit to try and curtail usage and
Right.
blah blah blah. It's
Right.
just
Oh my
you make a
God, those are the
purchase,
worst.
you pay tax on that purchase because you voluntarily want those things. If you don't want the fucking vegetables, go grow your own so you don't pay taxes on buying them.
Yeah.
Right?
That is a level of statism I could take up the ass.
Because it's
a little
lubed.
there's
There's
a little bit
lube,
more
right?
lube on there than
Right.
There's a
other
little more
versions.
lube.
Yeah.
Like I own my property. Like that's like I'm cool with that. I could be okay with that cock.
So what I'm hearing is you're all
Status
willing
cuck.
you're all willing to cuck a little. But again, it does
If I had enough people to not cuck, I wouldn't.
right.
Right.
It's it is the idea that the only way to change the system is someone's going to have the courage to get into the system while maintaining the core values and principles that they believe in and use those as motivations to change the system, because the system exists. I mean, you could go in and nuke the whole fucking thing, but I can promise you the end result is not going to be anywhere near what you hoped it would be. It's going to be another shit show. I mean,
that's the price
Speaking
for
of
liberty.
shit shows, I
Robert.
do have a question here.
okay.
Actually, it's a relay.
Wait, hold on. You don't come on our show and say, speaking of shit shows.
I have a relay question from Austin Peterson over on Twitter. Once we declare Antifa to be a terrorist organization, when do we start arming and funding them?
Yeah, I know. I saw that.
I
That's
saw
fucking
that.
hilarious.
Hilarious.
That was really good.
They still have to buy those
Fucking
weapons.
stick it to them.
They still,
they don't have money
to go buy those.
right?
Well, I mean, if Daddy keeps the bank account full, they can buy a few.
They spend too much on backpacks to worry about being able to purchase
designer masks and shit.
Yes. They're so cute and adorable. Yeah. Designer Molotov cocktails. You gotta love it.
Can't fash the fash without this Gucci face mask.
Right. Is that Hello Kitty on your gas bottle?
Dude, I love that there are Antifa chapters with merch stores. That's my favorite. Oh, I love it. Yeah, just the hypocrisy is fantastic.
All right,
if they didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all.
That's true.
All right,
they don't. I mean, it's all relative to whatever's going on. Whatever's going on, their principles will shift to make.
I think the boss is trying to talk.
Which boss? Me? Yeah, I'm talking right now.
Daddy government? I don't see him.
No, he's listening though.
Always.
Hi, FBI agent.
Hi.
Don't make me call the National Guard, okay?
They're busy. I'm pretty sure they're busy. They're busy treading on other people right now. They don't have time for us.
Trying to look like they're treading on people with their empty magazines.
Because I will very specifically bring in thousands and thousands.
I'll eat your ass.
Yeah, I will eat your ass. Oh my God.
Eat your ass.
Okay.
Alex Jones is a national treasure.
All good things must come to an end. So let's go through some final steps here. First off, I want to say thank you to the chat. Sorry we haven't interacted as much with the chat, but you know that we often do this when we have one of these shows with guests where you kind of get left in the dust. But don't you worry, we have been reading what's been said, and it's been filtering in.
And some of you know who you are, despicable.
Yeah, God, Wyatt, really? Also, if I Ed, you've got some things going on. You do a wonderful show and all of that fun stuff. Do you want to throw a quick plug out there for anything Ed like?
Well, I do. Make sure that you go over and check out freedomscoop.com and check out all of the merch that we have over there. I have Contemporary every morning at 7:30, so come and check us out every weekday morning. And I'm not going to plug the other show because there may be some changes coming to that here in the near future. So we'll hold off on that one for right now. But yeah, come and check me out over on my channel, J Edgar, or over on Twitter at Esblog Twitter with a 1 in place of the I.
Does that mean you're going to start doing more shows without the shirt?
Nice.
You want me to take my shirt off?
That's
I-
You know I'll do it.
Libertarian, bro.
It's
See,
true, you
now
will do it.
I don't understand how you read that into it. I'm just,
He just really wants to take his shirt
this
off.
is the problem with you. With
No,
you
I'm
fucking,
just saying, don't tempt me because you know that I'll do it on a moment's notice.
All right. My breasts need to be free. So
Free the nipple.
Company man. Now I know that you, if I'm not mistaken, you really don't have a voice out there, much like Ed or John and myself. You're just kind of, you just kind of do your own thing. But if you have any final things that you'd like to say out there,
I do.
oh,
He
please.
actually has a website, www.meatspend.com. Go check that out. You'll find him there.
Do that. I just wanted to say thank you. This was a welcome conversation during the end of the world. After Rona, I had to put my dog down, so that was rough. And
Yeah, my condolences for that. That is
in the
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if we can get F's
F's in
for
chat.
Company Man's dog, that would be awesome. That's someone said F. Oh, you said F3.
Yeah, I bumped the 3 when I was hitting the enter button.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry about that, man. I know that's like the hardest. That's one of the hardest things.
And with that, it's been a little rough.
Yeah, I can imagine
Yeah.
it has. Yeah, that is. I still miss Tuffy. That was my dog when I was a kid. I still miss that dog. He just he couldn't take the bus. He couldn't take on the bus. He thought he could. He thought he could, but he could. Yeah, he thought he
I
could
shouldn't
handle
laugh
it.
at that, but
No, I mean
the way that was worded, that was hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, he made it as a he was making light of it.
Yeah, I try to. That's how I deal with my pain, is to try.
Yeah,
to make light of
that's
it,
yeah.
Yeah. But I do appreciate you coming on, Company Man. Hopefully my ignorance didn't come off as completely ignorant. You have given me some great enlightenment, as have the other two folks here. Same for you, Ed. A lot of good voice there. I value these opinions. I value these perspectives because it does enlighten me more as I make this journey into whatever, I'm going to, die from one of these days. These parties are going to kill me. One of the three. I don't know. So, John, if you don't mind, could you please tell the lovely folks where they can tap into this wealth of fun and excitement that we're constantly doing?
Yes, of course. If you check in our description right down below, you'll see links to a bunch of shit. The first one on there is our Twitter, which is at the GenGapP. I like to be on there sometimes, and I'll make snarky comments at check marks. So that's kind of fun. And then we've got our Discord server down there as well. So make sure you join that. It's nice and fun and spicy. We got a lot of different opinions in there, and shit pops off, man. It's fun. If you like that sort of thing, join the conversation.
When it happens, it happens.
Oh, it happens. It happens nice and hard.
According to Midget B, I take Yaz to school.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, so there's that. And then, as Ed mentioned earlier, we've got freedomscoop.com on there, of which we are also members. And, of course, the merch store that Ed also mentioned. However, what he failed to mention is that the Generational Gap has their own T-shirts. See, we have our own T-shirts and our own mugs. And they can be yours.
What are you, fucking Crowder?
Yes.
Yeah, see that right there?
It's not my club.
I don't have. They're not handcrafted. I'll tell you that. But
Disgusting.
See that shit right
Well,
there, Ed? That's
right.
what we're talking about.
That's
Ed,
capitalism right there.
Right
That's
there.
capitalism. And
free market, sir. Free market.
to be even better, you can enter the code GenGap at checkout, and you'll get 15% off your purchase. Now, I know Ed says he also has a promo code, but I heard it doesn't work. So I just use the
don't even
GenGap
bother.
promo code. It'll work out better for you, I promise.
I think it's like homo promo, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, stop it, you big silly.
You know, I will say this.
Milder with the Gen Gap plug. That's funny.
Milder.
Yeah.
I will say, you know, I surprised myself today when I did have this revelation that I'm becoming much more libertarian minded as I was going through the chat and just running this dialogue. And I was almost proud of myself. I'm like, wow, I get this. Suddenly I seem to be getting some of this.
You were holding it up really well during me and Yaz's semi-agreements.
Right? I can't.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck him. Fuck him. He should be on my side. He should be on my side. But one thing I will say, I don't want to make light or allow us to be distanced from the things that are going on in our world. Whether we agree with them or not, this is our present reality. So it is imperative to me that while we're out there, that we're staying safe, that we're looking out for ourselves and our own, and taking care of ourselves. This is a troubling time, and it's having a very negative impact on a lot of people. So just take care of yourselves, take care of each other. I know that sounds pathetic to say, but it is what we need to do. I mean, hey, I have a community here in my neighborhood. That's how I know when shit's not in the right, because I can see out my window when something's not right. I know my neighbors. I build a community. That's what people need to do. Yes, Ed.
Yes,
you have
Ed,
a question?
you can go to the bathroom, Ed. Yes.
Yeah, I do have a question. I already did that. When the fuck did you become Sting?
What? Oh, shut up. No, that's Jerry Springer. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. That's Jerry Springer. God, Sting.
That's the radio in him coming out.
I prefer completion every time. Fuck that tantric shit.
Yeah, that tantric shit is fuck that. I don't have time for that shit. Yeah.
I was talking about the speech, but I see where you're going with that.
Yeah.
No,
I don't have time for all that shit.
No, a company man does bring up a good point. Yeah, look to your community, make stronger ties in your community, and these things don't have to be as scary as they potentially could be. When you have to worry about your neighbors, things get sketchy. But that being said, I do appreciate everyone who was here tonight taking part in the conversation, the chat. You guys, I love you very much. I'm so glad that you show up and you come here and put up with our inane ramblings. On that note, we're going to get out of here. And Ed, whenever you're here, I'd love to hear it. If you could you please go ahead and give us your closing statement that always warms my heart?
Never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Take care.
Thanks,
Except
folks.
for me. You can take my word as gospel. Just saying.
Oh,
I'm not a statist, so you can definitely take my word.
Hey, yeah, exactly, yeah.
All right, we're out of here. Have a good night, folks. Thank you.
See you guys.
The war begins.